Before we're a cashless society. This is where I get scared because it's too similar to the mark of the beast. It's too similar to exactly what it says. You won't be able to trade, you won't be able to do anything unless you have the mark.
Many American businesses have already gone cashless as well. They'll pretend it's all about convenience, but really, it's all about control. The emergence of a system for comprehensive control that's so complete that we can barely imagine it.
Countries like India, Estonia, Korea, there's a long list, have taken national steps to provide citizens who wish with a secure form of digital identification that can be presented online. A secure digital ID biometrically synced to your smartphone.
Headed toward a one world global government with one massive, monstrous leader.
We would like to see there are two orders in this world. This is a huge mistake. We need a single global order.
So, how do we do it?
The federal government and the likes of the WEF, the World Economic Forum, know they can't circumvent the Constitution, so the only way is to make you bend to their will by controlling your livelihood. How are they going to do that? Simple. Make sure that they control or at least have knowledge of all of your money and every financial transaction you make. Digital currency. Now, look, even CNN noted the United States is the latest to signal urgency in the research and potential digital version of its dollar via a central bank digital currency, or CBDC. That's CNN saying that. That is how they're going to do it. They're going to sell it to you under the guise of ease, security, greater good, whatever. And the U.S. government is taking their lead from someone who no one elected, has demonstrated he can't be trusted, and has also no real qualifications to be given any advice on financial stuff on the world stage. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the real-life Dr. Evil, Klaus Schwab.
Just would like to highlight what you said about the European Chips Act, because it's a very important step to create the physical brain for digitalization and to have it located to a certain extent in Europe. Au bout de ça, on parle de puces qu'on pourra s'implanter. Ce sera quand ça? Certainement dans les 10 années à venir. Et d'abord, on va les implanter dans nos vêtements, c'est-à-dire wearables, comme on le dit. Et après, on pourrait s'imaginer qu'on les implante dans nos cerveaux ou dans notre peau. Et à la fin, peut-être il y a une communication directe entre notre cerveau et le monde digital. Ce que nous voyons, c'est une sorte de fusion du monde physique, digital et biologique.
Government comes in and says, I'm going to make it easier for you, but I'm going to need certain requirements of you. I'm going to need you to have a digital ID. That digital ID will be attached to a social credit score. And we're going to give you universal basic income. You no longer have to worry about food or shelter. You'll be taken care of, and now you can pursue your dreams.
Is this the mark of the beast you're speaking of, sir?
I think it is.
Right.
Look,
That's the whole thing, is it's never been difficult at any point in history. Like we got a dude right now that's telling you front and center that I put a computer in somebody's head, guys.
Right.
Imagine the joy of connecting with your loved ones, browsing the web, or even playing games using only your thoughts.
The next version of the glasses, one of the things that I'm pretty excited about, I think we'll start getting some consumer neural interfaces soon. I think that's going to be pretty wild.
In Sweden, the microchips are already here. The microchip implants use the same technology that's in contactless credit cards, which have made cash pretty much obsolete in Sweden. No cash. At this tech fair, a chipping event for those on the cutting edge, merging their hands with this new technology. I thought it would be fun, right? The process is simple and swift. A pinch of the skin, and in a matter of seconds, the chip is inserted. The transformation is complete.
In the future, do you think everyone is going to be chipped?
I think it'll be voluntary, but I am certainly convinced that millions of people will find it very, very valuable to have a smart device under their skin.
Human microchipping may be our future, but in Sweden, it's already reality.
Tell a story for so many years. Yeah. Before anybody ever even figured out how to write it down. And you're telling telling a story about a civilization that allowed people to put brain implants in them. And then all of a sudden the brain implants were hijacked by machines and people became just meat zombies controlled by corporations. That'd be a demonic thing. If a demon tricked human beings, that demon would be like a famous character in books and folklore. But that demon exists, and it's just technology. It just shows itself through this desire for the newest, latest innovations that are going to constantly fuel it becoming more and more powerful. Until one day it tricks you into letting it into its head, like a vampire.
Imagine the joy of connecting with your loved ones, browsing the web, or even playing games using only your thoughts.
This kind of surveillance, when you watch the big president, the big leader, gives a speech on television, the television could be monitoring you and knowing whether you're angry or not, just by analyzing the cues, the biological cues coming from your body. So people are now watching us online, all over the world, this conversation. Now, maybe even right now, the people who are watching us are being watched and analyzed. And the thing is, it's not just you're now watching this. The thing is, we know that you're watching this, and we also know how you feel. Are you angry about what you hear? Are you frightened? Are you bored? This is the kind of power that Stalin didn't have. When Stalin gave a speech, everybody, of course, clapped their hands and smiled. Now, how do you know what they really think about Stalin? It's very difficult. But in 10 years, the future Stalins of the 21st century, they could be watching the minds, the brains of all the population all the time. And also, they will have the computing power to analyze all that. Now, you don't need human agents. You don't need human analyzers. You just have a lot of sensors and an AI which analyzes it. And that's it. You have the worst totalitarian regime in history.
He's cogent. But I undersold him when I said he was cogent. He's far beyond cogent. In fact, I think he's better than he's ever been. Intellectually, analytically. Start your tape right now, because I'm about to tell you the truth. And F you if you can't handle the truth. This version of Biden, intellectually, analytically, is the best Biden ever.
Now, of course, the footage that emerged early on from the event, including the bizarre spectacle of the U.S. president wandering off after a skydiving display and having to be wrangled back into line by his counterparts, other world leaders, was bizarre enough. And this led to amazed commentary from around the world, as well as this fantastic New York Post front page, Meander in Chief. That's him, folks. And then there was this uncomfortable moment when the president went in for an intimate forehead-to-forehead moment with the Holy Father, Pope Francis.
Anyway, and I don't want to, well, maybe choose my words. I'll go ahead and roll a shrine. Los Angeles and what am I doing here? From the.
And the leader of the free world was in sterling form last night after a big Democrat fundraiser in LA with many A-listers there, the usual suspects, George Clooney, Julia Roberts, Barbara Streisand. Watch here as Barack Obama grabs Biden's arm and helps direct the confused POTUS off stage. I think we've found out who the puppet master is. No wonder many savvy pundits consider this Obama's third term, and it's been his most disastrous yet.
Distinguished guests, please welcome the Honorable Lloyd J. Austin.
Joe Biden also had another bizarre encounter with the press this week when he seemed to shout at them in gibberish. Latest polls reveal American voters are realizing their president is a walking disaster, with many who supported him in 2020 now turning their backs on him in 2024.
It may sound like the stuff out of movies, but an asteroid hurtling towards the Earth is something real-life scientists are preparing for at NASA. They're refining the plan because in a few short years, a space rock could come quite close.
Well, astronomers may be witnessing something never seen before by humans, a supermassive black hole roaring back to life. In 2019, astronomers noticed a sudden spike in brightness in a galaxy 300 million light years away. They discovered the galaxy has been emitting more visible and infrared light in recent years and even started emitting X-rays in February. Researchers think they may be witnessing a supermassive black hole at the center of the galaxy awakening.
Well, if the solar eclipse and the northern lights weren't enough for you, a once-in-a-lifetime explosive event in space is expected soon, and it could light up our sky over Michigan.
NASA predicting a once-in-a-lifetime event sometime this month.
I get a
Clock's
date?
ticking.
Oh. Be on the lookout for what looks like a new star in the night sky between now and September. The rare brightening event is known as a nova.
NASA reports that a star system 3,000 light years away, known as T Coronae Borealis, is about to erupt in a rare nova explosion. This event will create a new star visible from Earth, possibly as bright as the North Star. The last time this happened was back in 1946. Scientists predict the explosion could occur by September, but the exact timing remains uncertain.
In about 5.5 years, a massive asteroid named Apophis, after the Egyptian god of chaos, will pass so close to the Earth, we'll be able to see it in the sky. And that has NASA scientists on high alert.
We want to be able to get a spacecraft out there weeks to months to get a look at Apophis before that close encounter with the Earth.
Scientists working with global partners carried out asteroid threat exercises back in April to figure out if a potential planet killer is headed our way and how the world would cooperate to safeguard Earth.
A group of researchers say they've identified at least 7 stars that might be surrounded by super advanced alien megastructures known as Dyson spheres. Yes, I said alien structures, and I know what you're thinking, but just stay with me here, because the basic idea was this. Superior intelligent life might build big structures around their home stars or planets as a way to harness or reuse that energy. A 1960s physicist who came up with this idea, Freeman Dyson, argued that if these structures existed, there'd be so much energy that human scientists on Earth could probably spot it because it would emit a lot of infrared radiation. So in this new study, researchers say they found 7 sources glowing in the infrared, those are their words, but couldn't find an obvious explanation for why these sources are glowing so much, which could mean they're Dyson spheres or something else entirely. And what I'm saying is, what? Space is so crazy. Do you think there is a scenario where a Dyson sphere might actually exist, or do you think this is really just the stuff of sci-fi fantasy?
I think it's feasible, unlikely. If you look at where we are since the Industrial Revolution, it's only a couple hundred years. We're in a precarious position. We have climate change. We have struggles with nuclear power, nuclear weapons that are could be destructive. It's unclear that any species that makes it that advanced could survive far enough into their own future to be able to build a Dyson sphere. But there are optimists out there who say we'll find a way.
Yeah, right. The universe is a pretty big place, right? And it'd be a shame if it was just us. Seems like a lot of waste of space, right?
Since late 2019, astronomers have observed some peculiar activity at a galaxy in the Virgo constellation that's some 300 light years away from us. And being 300 light years away means one would have to travel 300 years at the speed of light to reach that destination. More than 4 years ago, this galaxy started shining brighter than ever before, and astronomers started observing this phenomenon very closely. They noted how dramatically this galaxy's brightness and emissions have been changing over the last 4 years. In fact, researchers in the domain arrived at a few interesting possibilities. That this could probably be the first ever real-time observation of a black hole being activated.
Now, as insane as it may sound, it looks like a Harvard paper by social science researchers raised some pretty far out there possibilities that could explain the whole UAP stuff that I have become very obsessed with. They're posing 4 possibilities, like maybe crypto-terrestrials or like this secret advanced civilization that's been hiding somewhere here on Earth, or even maybe the moon where we can't see them, or maybe humans from the future are visiting us, or maybe like magical beings like fairies or angels are real.
We're going to begin our broadcast once again tonight with wild weather in the U.S. It has been our lead story almost every night for the past 10 days, and that's because it's been the hottest, wettest start for summer ever in some areas, all made more likely by climate change. The extreme weather is having dire consequences. Authorities keeping a close eye tonight on this Minnesota dam that is facing an imminent failure. In South Dakota, entire neighborhoods have been destroyed. And for about 60 million Americans, a significant heat wave continues.
The raging floodwaters swallowed land and trees and partially breached the Rapidan Dam. Officials here are monitoring the 114-year-old dam around the clock as rushing water continues to erode the soil. Tens of thousands of residents who live in the surrounding watershed are also keeping a close eye on the situation. The Barnes family has been here for more than 50 years.
We never ever thought in a million years this would ever happen, and here it is.
More than 3 million people across 4 states live in areas impacted by the flooding. Sections of the Mississippi and Missouri rivers are still on the rise. This was the moment a rail bridge connecting Iowa and South Dakota collapsed. Part of it is now submerged in the Big Sioux River, which crested at a record 45 feet. CBS's Jonah Kaplan is in South Dakota.
I'm Jonah Kaplan in hard-hit Union County, South Dakota, and the images, they just speak for themselves. That house over there falling into the ground, this road cut in half, and it's all, what, from a hurricane? No, and not from an earthquake. It's from a flood. All those downpours over the weekend. Did this house just sink into the ground?
Yep, just eroded the ground away and just dropped down.
Sheriff Jim Prouty showed us around the McCook Lake neighborhood, where he says between 50 and 60 homes were damaged.
It's beyond words. I mean, to us, it's a situation. To the families, the homeowners, this is their lives.
South Dakota Governor Kristi Noem.
This is extensive damage that has changed people's lives forever. The ripple effect is going to be felt long term.
The water also closed a section of I-29. Crews removed enough mud and debris to reopen the interstate late today.
Back here in Minnesota, the water is receding slowly, but the danger isn't over.
This morning, destructive flooding causing chaos across the Midwest. In South Dakota, homes near Big Sioux River underwater, while cars and SUVs are floating on roads turned into rivers. Officials there warning residents to be on constant alert.
It's just a reminder that these situations change quickly.
In Minnesota, Governor Tim Walz surveying completely submerged communities.
We're not out of the woods yet. Water levels are still rising.
Residents near Mankato bracing for the possible total failure of the Rapidan Dam. After intense rain and rapidly rising floodwaters caused the section next to the dam to give way.
That's our life.
And overnight, more devastation. In a dramatic scene, a portion of this home fell into the river.
Oh my.
Jenny Barnes and her brother David grew up and work here. David lived in the house by the river with their dad.
We know the house is gone. We know we'll never be able to go back in that house.
The store is the main thing we want to try to keep because cannot replace the damn store.
They aren't swearing. That's the name of their family business. A historic cafe, affectionately called the Dam Store, operating more than a century.
That's our livelihood.
In Sioux City, Iowa, water levels are receding, but residents aren't out of the woods yet. Rich and Amy evacuated their mother, but they still can't reach her flooded home.
Devastating.
Very, very, devastating. Mom's worried about her furniture. She's worried about her keepsakes.
With a strong line of thunderstorms already wreaking havoc across Michigan Tuesday, the state is expecting even more rain by the end of the week.
Tonight, as America's onslaught of severe weather rages on, tornado on the ground, a fearless team of storm-chasing scientists is shedding new light on the power of last month's deadly EF4 twister that leveled parts of Greenfield, Iowa. Wind speeds in this tornado topped 300 miles per hour.
Yeah, so with our radar, we calculated wind speeds of over 300 miles per hour, which is very fast and very strong wind speeds.
300 miles per hour. Only the third tornado ever recorded with winds that strong. And it moved, they say, at up to 55 miles per hour, twice a twister's typical speed.
It's very rare. 1%, 2% of tornadoes.
The jaw-dropping data courtesy of 9 scientists from the University of Illinois who raced to place their state-of-the-art Doppler on wheels trucks and sensor-equipped pods in the tornado's path, a feat typically reserved for Hollywood. But this devastation was all too real.
I've never seen a tornado like that.
On the ground for more than a mile, officials said the tornado destroyed more than 150 homes.
All right, now to our series GMA Out Loud, celebrating Pride Month. And this morning, Steve Osunsami joins us with a look at how some religious institutions are becoming more inclusive.
Surveys continue to show that there are more Americans who are lesbian, gay, LGBTQ+, who are religious than many people would think. And the conversation over faith and sexual orientation continues to get deeper.
What's up? This is the I Tried to Be Straight podcast with Nate and
Susie.
And
Nate Peters and Susie Aguirre are leading a community online of former church kids who are Christian and queer. He's the son of a pastor and went to ministry school. She grew up Catholic and worked in an evangelical church.
It's very awkward to go to church and have people talk about how being gay is wrong, and then I'm sitting there like, I should find another church.
The emotional conversations they're bringing to their podcasts are happening in churches across the country. This was after the historic moment this spring when members of the United Methodist Church ended their ban on clergy who are LGBTQ. The Methodists also decided to recognize marriage as a covenant between two people of faith and not just a man and a woman.
These decisions that have been made over these last few days is a testimony that we are claiming that we are a church where everyone belongs.
Bishop Tracy Malone is the Methodist Church's top bishop and the first black woman to hold the job. She points to studies that show that nearly half of queer Americans say that they're religious, about 5.3 million adults. Big picture, what's changed?
What has changed is, number one, there's been more understanding around human sexuality and people coming into a greater understanding of science and how that relates to how persons are born, that it's not a choice for people.
Asia Cole is trying to become a minister.
The least I can know is that God has me. So that is what I needed as a young, queer, black person sitting in the pews, just wanting God to love me.
Her journey is thanks in part to a group called Pride in the Pews that now meets with black churches to make sermons and church ministry more friendly to queer Christians.
This was intended to provide black faith leaders with the tools and resources to create more affirming environments. We only had spots for 10 churches. Over 40 black-led churches applied for this fellowship. That was a huge win, a huge feat.
This is, of course, not without controversy. By some estimates, more than 1 million Methodists have left the Methodist Church over some of these changes. And on the other side of this coin, guys, there are many religious Americans who say that they're walking away from their church because they feel that their ministry is too hostile towards gay and lesbian people.
America can't stop Israel from going to war with Hezbollah. That's what a U.S. envoy told Lebanese officials recently. Still, the U.S. is urging Israel to find a diplomatic solution with the terror group.
At the same time, one Israeli official is warning America to keep an eye on Iran, the greatest threat to the future of the world.
The U.S. is warning Hezbollah
Hezbollah that it can't stop Israel from going to war to stop the terror group's daily attacks on the north.
Hezbollah's provocations threaten to drag the Israeli and Lebanese people into a war that they do not want.
Still, Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin is urging Israel's visiting defense minister to seek a diplomatic solution.
Another war between Israel and Hezbollah could easily become a regional war with terrible consequences for the Middle East.
Yoav Gallant says Israel is determined to establish security in the north and bring back some 80,000 citizens evacuated from their homes. He urged the U.S. to focus on heading off another threat, Iran getting nuclear weapons.
The greatest threat to the future of the world and the future of our region is Iran.
Israel's prime minister says he will accept only a partial ceasefire deal that would not end the war in Gaza. But Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is already hedging on that statement a bit. He also says the current phase of fighting in Gaza is winding down. That would free up troops to confront Hezbollah terrorists in the north.
All eyes are on northern Israel as the country braces for another large war. The Iran-backed Lebanese militant group Hezbollah continues to launch daily drone and rocket attacks. Israeli officials say they're wrapping up offensive operations in Gaza, something that will allow them to shift their focus to the northern front.
After the intense phase is finished, we will have the possibility to move part of the forces north, and we'll do this first and foremost for defensive purposes.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu overnight said he would not accept a complete ceasefire in Gaza, a position at odds with the American-backed plan to get some of the remaining 120 hostages freed from Hamas captivity. He later walked back those remarks. As the war in Gaza winds down, Israel is still launching large airstrikes in heavily populated areas, killing dozens of Palestinians this weekend, according to a local hospital director. Netanyahu has clashed with the Biden administration in recent days about the Americans withholding weapon shipments over concerns about the rising civilian death toll in Gaza. Israeli officials say those weapons will be needed in case of a larger regional war. A source with knowledge of ongoing talks to avoid such a conflict tells Fox News that Qatar has been engaging Israel and Lebanon to de-escalate.
There is a massive heat wave from the Midwest to the Northeast starting today, and millions are facing life-threatening, potentially record-breaking temperatures.
It's going to be a hot one today, and already the schools are getting prepared.
5:03, and this heat wave is certainly a challenge, especially for people who work outside. Fox 43's James Corrigan spoke to one business owner and a federal official on how to keep outdoor employees safe in the extreme heat.
Well, we are not the only ones facing scorching temperatures today. As far north as the Canadian border, it will feel like 100 degrees, while in the west, wildfires have turned deadly. Here's ABC's Rhiannon Alley.
They've never seen this before. The National Weather Service in Caribou, Maine, near the Canadian border, has issued its first ever excessive heat warning. The heat index is expected to hit 105 degrees today.
Exactly is happening when we hear a heat dome is in place?
Well, it is really the same thing that we see when we see extreme heat, and that's pretty much high pressure. It's sinking air, and that sinking air compresses as it sinks. And that's really what ramps up these temperatures. That's exactly what's happening across the east, and that's only going to shift and strengthen over the next couple of days. So as we look over towards the northeast, you see all of those excessive heat warnings and heat advisories. You have areas like Pittsburgh that could see 5 days of record heat in a row, which would be the longest stretch. Areas like Chicago saw record high temperatures yesterday. And you're looking at this, you're thinking mid-90s, that's nothing. Well, for them, it's really early in the season. Numbers like this are extreme, and they don't happen until late July or August. So again, early in the season, and then you have infrastructures that are not quite ready for temperatures that are this high.
Next, I also wanted to quickly address the extreme heat wave that we are seeing across the country. We know that extreme heat can be dangerous, which is especially true for older adults and people with underlying health conditions. We encourage everyone experiencing extreme temperatures this week to check in on their neighbors, drink plenty of water, and look for cooling centers if needed. Stay alert. Listen to local officials and weather alerts, and visit heat.gov for more information on how to stay safe.
Now, as Earth's magnetosphere continues to fail the Earth at an alarming rate, with seemingly no end in sight, this may be a good time to really understand just how important Earth's magnetosphere really is to the life on this planet. The magnetosphere is that area of space around the planet that is controlled by the planet's magnetic field. The shape of the Earth's magnetosphere is the direct result of being blasted by solar winds.
The solar wind is primarily composed of protons and electrons, charged particles streaming out from the sun. Some of those particles have very high energies, radiation energies, and they can damage astronauts and spacecraft.
The solar wind compresses its sunward side to a distance of only 6 to 10 times the radius of the Earth. A supersonic shockwave is created sunward of Earth, called the bow shock. Most of the solar wind particles are heated and slowed at the bow shock and detour around the Earth. The Earth's magnetosphere is a highly dynamic structure that responds dramatically to solar variations, such as solar storms and solar flares. But now, our magnetosphere is failing.
A 100 microtesla wave of radiation that would destroy our ozone layer, killing every living organism on the planet.
With a weakening of our atmosphere, the Earth can burn up. Our magnetosphere redirects the solar winds in a very specific way. But what we have is a fluctuating magnetosphere, which means certain parts of Earth is getting worse, and it's getting worse, and it's getting worse. And there are certain parts of Earth that have no protection at certain times, and it's just happening all over the place.
As Earth begins to feel the effects of these superheated particles bombarding the surface, the first thing to go will surely be our electrical grids.
So when you're dealing with electronics is very susceptible to current, right? Not necessarily voltage, but current. And some of the new advancements that they put in the power lines that they spent 8 years upgrading, trying to make them EMP proof. Right? They also came with a type of flaw, and it's called jump current. So you can have current held in specific components that will keep it there in discharge, given the proper, external magnetic force. In other words, how they built certain components, all you need is a large magnetic force outside of it, and it causes it to be just like a capacitor. And it will discharge, which means if the sun fluctuates a bit too much, or if our magnetosphere fluctuates a bit too much, you've already got that electric potential there. And the magnetic buildup causes current to flow in those wires, and then it's going to overload. What protects us from an EMP is your front door. The transformer and certain components they built to transmit power to the customer's home is on the inside of your house. So they can stop the influx of voltage from the transformer in a certain way. But what I'm talking about is the electric potential built up that goes right to the customer's home. And there's nothing blocking it. And when that happens, you're going to have more current means your wires are going to have a higher temperature. And I'm really worried about Texas. I'm so worried about Texas because they have put up, their grid is twice as, has more clients out there. And so they bought in quite a bit of steel, quite a bit of copper and everything else when they were running these wires to new facilities.
In Texas, more than 3 million households still without power, heat, and for many running water for a third day, creating dangerous conditions in the Dallas area where temperatures aren't expected to get above freezing today at all. The power grid there buckling under the pressure of this deadly cold snap.
Joe Biden and Democrats better think twice about unleashing the Green New Deal on the whole country. Just take a look at what's happening in Texas. The state hit with massive power outages from a giant winter storm that's hammering most of the country. 4 million people in the state are in the dark and don't have heat. The cold crippling Texas's power grid, and part of the reason why is because wind turbines are frozen. Half of the state's wind power capacity was reportedly offline. Former Energy Secretary Rick Perry says what's happening in his home state could be a sign of things to come.
And so you have all these potential points of breakdown which raises, that potential of fire. And I'm extremely worried about Texas because they have gas and oil underneath the ground, right? I know that there was a presidential discussion about releasing all that, but that takes at least a year. And during that process, things fall apart. And we haven't even seen the hot temperatures yet. People are going to see temperatures of it. Now, this is going to sound crazy. You watch 168 degrees this year. We had two rolling fronts that came through. And they want to report some of these hot spots on Earth. They're being picked up from satellite. It is unbelievable. It changed some of the thermal graphics that they normally read in the colors. They had to change all of that because they picked up hot spots that were just simply white, right? And you can't get data if something's totally white. And so what they had to do was scale back the readings so they could actually account for some of these new hot temperatures that we had. And they have a warning out for potential fires this entire year. They even gave the name derecho to explain some of the phenomena that's happening. But they'll always try to normalize some of these new conditions, right? But we shouldn't see it as such. But they will understand that conditions are degrading on the Earth. They're not going to see a word. They're just not going to see a word.
As the magnetic pole continues to shift, the question of humanity's future here on Earth is a more serious question than most people would like to believe.
And what can't be stressed enough is all these things people are going to see. It's almost a trial of flesh. And if a person can subdue their flesh now, work on that now, God has given us a lifetime. If they can work on that now, they won't have that issue.
There's so many lies that humanity is embracing. The lies that are being embraced by humanity are setting humanity up for the destruction. They forgot one person, Jesus, who is the way, the truth, and the light. Now look, the churches are responsible.
A weak, immoral, disconnected, ignorant, and unhealthy population is an easy target for the next stage, the creation of an entire generation of androgynous beings. Masculinity is under attack psychologically, culturally, and biologically.
Many of the famous, if you will, 150-year-old preachers would always say that if Christianity were to die in America, it would die because the pulpits are dead. That's my version. But the point being is that we're at now a total embrace by them who are claimants to Christianity of every foul and unclean spirit that has been able to deceive them because of one thing: they have denied the testimony of Jesus.
It's an evil psyop with a clear agenda to get us closer to transhumanism by making us question the most fundamental notion of human identity, our gender.
The oldest lie in the Bible, in the book of Genesis, ye shall be as God.
The moral to be drawn from this dangerous nightmare situation is a simple one. Don't let it happen. It depends on you.